everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Lindsay Mitchell. I am the founder of Vital Side, and I feel so immensely grateful today to be interviewing the incredibly talented celebrity nutritionist specialist and mindset coach, JJ Virgin. JJ, thank you for being here today.
Excited to be included.
Yeah, and I'm here along with Qigong master and founder of Abundant Health, Beth Meisner. Beth, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited about co-creating with you guys.
Awesome. So our topic today is just how important it is to address stress that exists in our bodies after experiencing an acute traumatic event. Sort of like the one we're all experiencing right now, going through this pandemic. So to address this, Beth and I have co-created Vital Side's newest program, Healing in Your Hands. So Beth, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that program?
Yeah, sure. It's a program that's designed to be a practical guide to shift the stress response after trauma so that it doesn't intensify and build up and create problems in our bodies and in our minds. So this is possible to be done through mental exercises, visualization, meditation, and Qigong exercises. So our goal is to really offer tangible tools that you and your kids, we're going to even have some stuff for kids that you can use each day to shift from a heightened state of panic, anxiety, and fear, and move into a calmer, quieter, more confident state of mind. So for more information about that program, we have a link here at the bottom of the video, and you're welcome to click on that and sign up for the wait list for registration, and we'd be happy to let you see what we've got. So we're going to talk more about the subject today, and as Lindsay said, we have JJ here with us. She's a triple board certified health expert. She's a fitness Hall of Famer, 4-time New York Times bestselling author. I'm jealous of that. Passionate advocate of eating and exercising smarter. And she also avidly promotes brain health after a family member, her son, had a traumatic brain injury. So welcome, JJ, to our little interview today. We're glad you were able to come on with us.
Yes, glad to be here.
So one of the most incredible things, you've done a lot of incredible things. I've known you for a while and been very impressed with all the way you get so many things done in your life. But for us, one of the most incredible that we look at and are marveling at is how you shifted your own mindset during the trauma your family went through when your son, Grant, was hit by a car and suffered major injuries. He wasn't given the hope that he would walk again. And today he's mobile. I think the last I heard from you, he was 85% of his cognitive function was back. And I know he had a big journey that he went through, but as his mom, you went through that trauma yourself as well. So we'd like to know what were some of the mindset tools you used during that specific time.
Yes, and I'll give you a update on him as well. You know, it's so interesting, Beth. I wrote the book, Miracle Mindset, and because my book agent was like, you have to tell people how you did this. And I'm like, I don't know how I did it, you know? And people kept going, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, oh, I think we're never better than when we're challenged. You could totally do this. And I wrote the book and I went through and talked about really the mindset that I had to have to be able to pull this off. What I didn't remember was where I got those mindset tools.
Oh.
And what's so interesting, I know, I feel like now I'm actually going to write the next book.
Yeah.
That is all about these lessons from Kay. When I was 30, I had the opportunity to work with a mentor, and she worked with me for 6 months under the guise she was going to help me become more successful in business. Well, for 6 months, she didn't teach me a darn thing about business. It was all mindset training, because she goes, unless you get this, nothing else will matter. Because the only limitations are the limitations in your mind. We have to fix that piece first, right? Mm-hmm. And what was so interesting is she helped me reshape the entire way I perceived reality. And that is so important, because the first night in the hospital, my son had been crossing the street He was 16 years old. His younger brother was 15. He was crossing the street at dusk. A car hit him going, we think, 40 miles an hour. A neighbor saw the woman get out of her car, gasp, get back in the car and drive off. And he was airlifted to the local hospital. He had multiple brain bleeds. He had a aorta. He had 13 fractures, literally bones sticking through his skin. And the doctor said that he never, he would have to get surgery to be able to make it. Otherwise, he was going to die sometime in the next 24 hours. The aorta was going to rupture. He said, but we can't do the surgery here. It's very specialized. And, he's never going to survive the airlift to the next hospital. And even if he were to survive that airlift, he's not going to survive the surgery. And even if he was going to survive the surgery, it just he keeps piling on, right? Even if he's going to survive that surgery, he'd be so brain damaged, it wouldn't be worth it. To which my 15-year-old son, the math geek that he is, back then goes, well, maybe a 0.25% chance he'd make it. And he goes, yeah, that sounds about right. And he's looks at me like, it's not zero, Mom. He goes, we'll take those odds. And so we overruled the doctor. He was airlifted. He survived the airlift. He got to Harbor UCLA, the #2 trauma center in the US, and in front of a doctor who was a complete godsend, who put together a team, 5 different types of surgical teams at 2 a.m., got a hold of a stent that was no longer even available. And when I walked into that hospital, because I had to drive through the night to get there, he was like, you the mom? I'm like, wah! He goes, we got this. We do this all the time. Don't even worry. Come with me. I'm going to show you where we're going to do the surgery. He's trying to get me out of the room, right? And, you'll wait up here. I'll come in when it's done. I'm like, all right. So I go sit down at the waiting room. A couple hours later, he comes back. He's like, he's fine. I fixed it. It's all good. He goes, so we're like, yay. Then he says, well, I don't know if he'll ever wake up though. That's not my part. I'm just the plumber. Anyway.
Wow.
What I realized, I went in to see him and I was holding a finger because that was the only thing that wasn't in a cast or covered by road rash. And I said, Grant, your name means warrior and you're going to be 110%. And I just decided at that point, I believe so thoroughly that you get what you expect and you have to ask the right questions. And again, that the only limitations are the limitations of your mind. These are all the things that mentor, Kay Smith, started teaching me at 30. I didn't know where they came from. They were so much a part of me that I looked at the situation and I went, heck, let's not just get him to live through this. Let's just go for it 110%. And I started managing everything around him because I felt like he'll know. So if he knows that we're all here going for it, and I said, Grant, you got to fight. You're a warrior. I'll bring in the troops. You just fight and I'll get everything. I'll bring in everything we need to do this. And he said later, he goes, Mom, the gray man came down and asked me if I wanted to live or die. And it's really nice on the other side. I wanted to stay there, but I kept hearing you talking. So I decided to come back.
Oh.
And, so, you hear these stories and I've always been fascinated by them. I didn't necessarily want to have one of my own, but what's important here is everything we do in life is research and development, right? All those challenging times that we've gone through, all those things that you go, oh my gosh, that was so hard. Well, when you look at the people who are really successful at life, it's not that they were given the easy, they didn't get hit with some kind of magic wand and everything got easy for them. No, they just went through tough times and they got stronger. Mindset's a muscle. They took it to the gym, it got stronger. They took it to the gym. So what I'd learned from Kay, I'd had so many amazing opportunities throughout life, like my dad dying of cancer and going through a horrible divorce and, just thing after thing after thing that just exercise my mindset muscle. So by the time I was standing in the hospital with Grant, my body went, oh, I know this. Here's what we need to do, and that's exactly, I just went to manage the environment, keep everything around him positive, stay focused on what you're grateful for, stay in appreciation. And I'm not saying it was easy and there weren't times I was completely freaked out. That's when I asked for help, but it was already in me as training. And I think that maybe a reframe for all of us is, I don't know. I know for sure one thing on this. We're going to go through tough times. We're going through them right now and we'll go through them again. And it is how you show up during those times that makes all the difference. And so each time we go through a challenging time, it's our opportunity to train ourselves to be able to handle these things, right?
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's such an incredible story. And I know I've heard you talk about this before, maintaining that abundant mindset as opposed to that scarcity mindset. And it sounds like that's something that you used during that traumatic time. And I know you're continuing to use it, you know, throughout his recovery. And so that's so, so incredible. And during this time where, you know, we all are experiencing trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a global level, people have lost their jobs, people have lost family members. How can you kind of use this same mentality, the same mindset that you used, you know, during your traumatic experience during this time, or what kind of tools, you know, can people go to during this time who feel in it, you know, who feel stuck?
Yeah. And we're all in it. But what's amazing, I mean, when you look at stress and trauma, so much of it is our perception of it that will help us navigate through this, right? So, you know, I remember looking there that first night, and after we got through the first night where he survived the airlift and survived the surgery, but now here we are in the hospital, and, you know, the doctors, the neurosurgeons were like, we don't know if he'll ever wake up. The orthopedic surgeons are like, we don't know if he'll ever walk, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, okay, get away. Like, first off, never say this stuff around him. We're going to stay totally positive, and I'm going to help him get to be 110%. And I knew that the single most important thing, now odds are against me, clearly, right? And what I had to do in order to be okay in life was to make sure that I'd done everything. I'd done my part. And so that's all I could think of is, what do I need to do to stay strong and stay positive and do my part? The other stuff's going to happen. You know, if you look at what's going on right now, there's some really scary stuff. What's your part that you can do? What can you control? What can you manage? And you can manage your mindset. You can control that. So what I would do is every morning, and this is just a way of life I learned way back with Kay Smith, is get up in the morning, get a pen, get a piece of paper. Don't do this on your phone. Don't look at your phone yet. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. Find them. You know, I mean, find them, because one of the most amazing things that's happened during this quarantine is I got the opportunity to spend time with my bonus daughter. I got married 5 years ago, and I have this amazing daughter. I've always had boys, you know, and so I got to spend time with my 21-year-old bonus daughter and my 23-year-old son, and my other son who lives close by. Grant was 24 now. And that was like the biggest gift I've ever had. And I think that we can always find those gifts during these times, right? So I'm in the event business. I just watched everything go sideways and contracts and everything else. I'm like, okay, what can we do here? You know, how can we help everybody? And so look for those silver linings. They are there. That is such a key critical thing. Get in gratitude every morning. And that's why even in the worst times, write down 3 things you're grateful for, because the minute you start to do it, it shifts your day. At the end of the day, what I would do when I was leaving the hospital, and I would get to the hospital sometime between usually 6 and 7 a.m. in the morning and leave between 8 and 9 p.m. And on Friday nights when you're leaving the hospital, it's like the most depressing thing ever, you know, and I would walk out of there. It'd be really easy to have a pity party. And I just always go, okay, what were the little miracles today? Because there was always something. Like, he made eye contact with me. He squeezed my finger. He wiggled his nose to some essential oils. I'd always find them. And then one of the big gifts that has happened there that I'm seeing happen again now is I had to ask for help. And that's a vulnerable place for people to be. And I find most people, that's like not a place you want to be, right? And when this happened, I wasn't asking help for me. My gosh, I sent an email out to my entire list and community. I said, hey, you know, I don't want your sympathy. This happened. I need your support. Like, any ideas, anything you have. And so if I started to go sideways throughout the day, what I would do, and this is such a cool thing to do, is just send a text to someone and tell them what you appreciate about them. I mean, in the way, it's kind of like, you know, you're almost being selfish, because you know what's going to happen if you send a text to someone and tell them what you appreciate about them, right? Yep. They're like, oh my gosh, I love you, you know. So, So I call that my jam, and it's gratitude in the morning, appreciation when you need to shift your mindset. Because there were times during the day when I would be like, it's easy to start to get a little down or a little frustrated, a little irritated. And so if I needed to shift my state, that's what I do. And then at night it was like, what are those little miracles? Just what's your jam? And that is a tool that we can use now as things get to be so bleak. I look at the gal whose husband just died, the Broadway star. I mean, that just, I think all of our hearts broke with hers. But you just watched how she behaved throughout that, and the mindset and her positivity and how she like held out hope all the way through. And even in his passing, how she behaved. What an example of like just the most extraordinary mindset management, right? And being grace under pressure. Mm-hmm. And so, we can take lessons from that. It's not that bad things aren't going to happen, but it's how we're going to respond and show up throughout those times, because it's really going to dictate how much we internalize it, how much it hurts our body, right? And how much it robs from our soul.
So you just segued perfectly into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. You're such an advocate for working with celebrity clients over the years and helping them lose weight and achieve optimum fitness. So with all these people you've worked with, how much have you seen that the body's stored trauma impacts someone's ability to thrive?
Oh, that's a good question. Here's what I'll say about all of that. Your body is, I'm kind of famous for saying your body's not a bank account, it's a chemistry lab. But your body's also a history book. Mm-hmm. And there's so much history in there that what I've seen with people, if they're struggling to lose weight and you've kind of gone through okay, let's look at your insulin and let's look at your adrenals and your thyroid and blah, blah, blah. You can look at all that stuff and go, what the heck is going on here? And are you doing something? Have you put this weight on as a way to protect yourself? Right? Because that's one we always have to look at. And is this something that you're doing? Because what I would start to see, Beth, is that someone would start to lose weight. And then if we had not healed some of those traumas or that pain or shifted their body image of who they are, they'll go straight back to where they were. And we talk about rebound weight. No, it's the habits. But what if it's really more the vision they have of themselves? And so often we need to shift that vision. And what if that vision was created as a way to protect themselves from something that happened to them? Or if early on it's interesting. I was just talking to a friend who went and did some deep work, and he'd gone up, this was not a client, but he's telling me his own weight loss journey where he had yo-yo dieted his whole life, and lots, like would weigh 300 pounds, then 250, then 200, then 250, just like these big crazy swings. And he went back, and in this deep meditation, he remembered when he was a child and he went to school and he was shamed by his classmates because he was so poor. And they were shaming him for the cheap clothing he was wearing. And he went back home and he just started to eat and stuff his face. And until he healed that, he was never going to be free from the eating, because he couldn't see himself there, right? He kept sabotaging it.
Yeah, the body, mind, and spirit connection. It's real. Yes. Thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And you talk, JJ, about mindset so much. And I know, recently in the past few years, you've also started to address brain health, I think because of Grant's experience, and you've learned so much along the way. What are some tangible tools that we can use today to kind of maximize our own optimal brain health, after experiencing trauma?
Yeah, there's so much you can do. And, I'd had some experience with brain health prior to that, which was fortunate in that my son early on had been diagnosed. He always had issues in school, and they called it intermittent explosive disorder and bipolar disorder and ADHD and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you've met him for 5 minutes. How can you say he's got this, right? Mm. And so I went and had every test under the sun. and, gluten intolerance and heavy metals and SPECT scans and et cetera. No one could ever figure it out. And to the point of basically being suicidal, right? So I had him on so many things to help control his brain, fish oil, et cetera, prior to the accident. And I think this is important. Like if I was going to do one thing to help someone's brain, I mean, obviously I'd start to remove a bunch of the toxic foods and sugar, because boy, fastest way to hurt your brain is sugar and all those toxins. But I'd also make sure that I had fish oil on board, omega-3s on board. And I really believe that protected Grant when he hit his head, because we know that omega-3s are neuroprotective, and he was already on 5 grams of fish oil a day to help stabilize his brain. And so, he had what they called an unsurvivable. They're like, you got to let him go, and we don't think he'll ever wake up. And my son today is 110%. He is better than before the accident. But what happened, what's super interesting about that is just recently, in the last year and a half, a very smart psychiatrist was like, have you ever tested him for Lyme disease? And we discovered that he had neuroinfections from, that's my doggy complaining because she wants to come in. We discovered they had neuroinfections, and we've healed those too. So it's incredible what you can do and how the brain can recover. I mean, he'd had that for over 20 years.
Wow.
And he's healed from that. Yeah. So I'll walk you through some of the things that I think are so key and critical for brain health. And what was awesome in the hospital is, I remember when the doctor said, don't worry. I mean, we've seen kids where they had lost half their brain, they had gunshot wounds, et cetera, and they come all the way back. You'd be amazed with kids. And I'm like, that's all I needed to hear. I'm like, okay. And so first thing I did was I got him on fish oil. Now the doctors, he'd already been on 5 grams. They would not let me do that. They wouldn't push it past 2 grams. So the minute he spit the feeding tube out himself, I started cranking up fish oil, and he was up at 10 grams a day, then 20 grams a day. And that's when he started talking. So that's one of the first things we did for him. One of the other things that we did quickly was essential oils. And so we started doing essential oils because it was one of the first things he could start to smell, was using essential oils. When he spit out his feeding tube, then it was like game on for I could give him any type of nutrition. So
it's in your hands now.
I was like, it was like game on. I had a NutriBullet in the hospital, because one of the first things he said, I was so proud of him. They tried to give him, I had a big sign that said no hospital food. In fact, I had also, you're not going to believe this, how ridiculous this is, but I had to put a sign up that said no Crystal Light, because they were very concerned about what he was going to drink. And I'm like, water,
Right.
I don't know. They're like, and I go, you realize, like, you cannot give him artificial sweeteners. Like, these are neurotoxic. Like, we are not giving him that. Because they were like very insistent, let's just give him Crystal Light. I'm like, we're not giving him Ensure. We're not giving him Crystal Light. I had to put a sign up. But one of the first things he said about this whole thing was hospital food, disgusting. And I'm like, my son, he's so great.
Oh.
So I had this, I was giving him, because I was concerned he for so long was on a feeding tube. I had him on a special amino acid blend. I had him on vitamin D with vitamin D. I had him on fish oil. I had him on really good clean proteins and healthy fats. So I was cranking him full of great stuff in the hospital. That was one of the first things that I started to do.
Very lucky you were able to do that. I had a loved one that was
no
like
kidding.
for a month, and we didn't do anything until he got out.
It was amazing what I did. And it was kind of like, I'm not going to tell and don't ask. And the nurses were like, could you tell me what you're doing? Let's write it down. They were like, because I want to use it with my mom. I want to use it with my family. But we were just kind of keeping it quiet and saying nothing. Because at first I tried to get the hospital to go along with the 10 to 20 grams of fish oil. And I had the guys who'd done this done the studies, who gave me all the studies, and they wouldn't do it. So that's when I went, okay, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm just going to keep quiet. I thought, ask for forgiveness, right? That'll be my theme. Once he got out of the hospital, then I could really go with it. And that's when, besides the food, the supplements, all of that, which we had pretty well dialed, and a lot of brain nutrients, we started doing stem cell therapy. We did hyperbaric. We did neurofeedback. We did a lot of movement therapy, a lot of coordination therapy, a lot of exercise. I mean, gosh, if you look at exercise and what it does for your brain, it's like the best. If that was a pharmaceutical, it would be, the most prescribed drug there is, right? Don't you agree, Lindsay?
Yeah, I love that. Prescribing exercise is key.
Yeah, it's so big. And then what we did, and Dr. Amen helped me with this one, was like, do ping pong. It requires coordination. So we did a lot of coordination exercise. I had him working with the trainer where he was doing all sorts of balancing stuff, because the only real thing that he's had, besides, having to have rods put in his femurs, and he had a crushed heel, they thought he'd never walk, all these things. But the biggest thing that he did have was he lost hearing in one ear, and they said, oh, you'll never get it back. And Grant's like, I'm not going to listen to you. So
my mom, I'm getting it back.
Yeah, it's like you almost say to him, Grant's never gonna. He's like, yeah, right. So he's gotten most of that back. And cognitively, the only thing he has now cognitively is a little bit of memory, but not really that much. I think he thinks he has more than he does. I mean, his mood's now amazingly stable. He's happy, he's productive. So, I mean, it's been incredible, but it's really been, it's been all of these therapies that make the difference. But the biggest thing that's made the difference is this complete belief that he can be better than he was before the accident, and then challenging him to do so. When we were kind of trying to protect him and do everything for him, which I did a little bit of, I admit, because, oh my gosh, when your son gets hit by a car and they start to go walk across the street, I was like, I practically tackled him. I'm like, stop, But when I started to push him and tell him I wasn't going to do things for him, and you got to do this, and look what I go, you were dead on the pavement. You can do this, right? It's like, you got this. This is totally. So, when he started to challenge, I think we're never better than when we're challenged. And he started to step up. And so I push him. I consistently push him to see how far he can go. And it just keeps him growing and growing and growing. And it's amazing. So now I decided, forget the 110%. Let's go to 120%. That's what we're on now.
Is he on the same page with you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
What an amazing story. And he has an amazing mom. And we're just really grateful for you giving us
an amazing mom and an amazing dad.
Yeah.
And an amazing brother, and an amazing community. And I always like to shout out to all, because they're like, I did my part, but boy, I did my part and everybody else jumped in to help. And the community really made me want to be a better person. I'm watching people who just come out to help, and it's like, wow, incredible.
Yeah. Having those resources, and that community, it's so important.
Right.
Asking for help, building that community, finding that community if you don't already have it.
Right. And here's the big thing, because I find with my whole community are doctors and other healthcare professionals, and they are healers and they love to help, but they don't like to ask for help. And I go, well, how does it make you feel when you help someone else? And they're like, oh, we love it, blah, blah, blah. I go, well, then isn't it kind of selfish that you don't ask for help?
Good point.
Doesn't have to be the give and take, right? I mean, so that's really one that I push people on. It was probably the big lesson learned, was like, oh, you need to ask for help too. Like, you got to do both.
Right. Yeah. Talk about the learning lab. JJ was in the learning lab.
Oh yeah. But we're all in the learning lab all the time, right? And I think that's an important lesson for right now, with so many unknowns, and who the heck, like talk about, like, who knows what's going to happen with this, when the next one's coming, what's going on with business. It's all one big unknown. So really, what's going to help you be able to get through it? It's really got to be your mindset and the focus on really putting your self-care at the top of the list. That, it was very clear. Here I was, and that whole thing happened with my son, and I had a weight loss book coming out, right? I was in the middle of promoting a weight loss book. And in weight loss, the biggest thing you hear from people is, this sounds great, and I'll start tomorrow. And all I thought about that first couple days in the hospital, because I walked into that situation super strong. I was very healthy, emotionally, physically. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if I was one of those people that said, I'll start this tomorrow? And I wasn't at the top of my game coming into this and going under this enormous amount of stress. And that second day in the hospital, I just made that decision that the way I was going to be able to pull this off, save my son, get him to 110%, was to make sure that I put my health at the top of the list, that I got my sleep, I ate correctly, I exercised, I took my supplements, I did all my stuff, I reached out for help, I had my community around me, and I did all of the stuff that I needed to do to take care of me so I could take care of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the important things to remember while we're going through all of these things, is that if you don't have your health, as we all know, nothing else really matters. And so put your health first. And I mean, gosh, this pandemic's really showing us that, prevention, which has always been hard to sell, but really coming into all of these things as healthy as possible is going to be the most important thing that you can do.
Well, JJ, where can people follow you and learn more about what you have to offer?
jjvirgin.com. I also have, if you go to jjvirgin.com/gratitude, I have that little exercise I talked about, the jam, all written out for you. So now you have no excuses to not do that every day. Plus it costs nothing and takes 5 minutes a day. So we can all start with that. I always like to throw out a little challenge.
So what I'm taking away from this, JJ, is that healing really is in our hands. Our program, Healing is in Your Hands. It's true. Healing really is in our hands, where there's so much we can do ourselves. And so Lindsay and I will hope that you will get signed up for the wait list, get into our program, see what we're talking about and how it can help you, because this Lindsay is an amazing woman. I did her 5-day program, and within 3 days, such huge shifts in chronic pain that I had been enduring for a couple of years. So it really does work. And JJ, thank you again for your time. We really appreciated hearing your inspiring story.
And I love the name of your program.
Healing in Your Hands.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. JJ, thank you again so much for being here.
Sure.